In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, amen. Respected fathers, administrators, members of the clergy, priests, deacons, and faithful who all gather here. Even though we, members of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church and the DFW Metroplex, are gathered here under unfortunate circumstances to stand in solidarity for our holy Orthodox and Apostolic Church, we gather here for a holy purpose, in support of the Holy Synod, our bishops, servants of the Church, and more importantly, those who are receiving the crown of martyrdom for their faith. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church is the oldest institution of faith in Ethiopia that served as a strong social bond among its people of different language, ethnic, and cultural background. It is a force that also formed and preserved the country. It is an institution that contributed to education, rule of law, constitution, and above all, peace and harmony among the people. When the country faced aggression from foreign powers, it was instrumental for a show of courage to defend the country against all forms of aggression. It is impossible to imagine Ethiopia without the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. I'll say that again. It is impossible. I want everyone to say it. It is impossible. 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 It is impossible to imagine Ethiopia. To imagine Ethiopia. To imagine Ethiopia. To imagine Ethiopia without the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church. Without the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church. Without the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. Without the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. This historical and iconic and mystical church that has done so much to preserve the country free of colonial powers is facing a grave danger under the repressive regime of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, who is using security forces to intimidate, detain, and now even kill church Orthodox Christians in support of a renegade group that a form of bishops who are trying to stage a coup against the Holy Synod of the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church. For the first time in the church's history, the former Abbasawios against the dogmatic principles and the canons of the Holy Apostolic Orthodox Tewahedo Church appointed himself as a patriarch, with two now defunct bishops lawlessly ordained 26 months as episcopate on January 22nd, 2023. Speaking of such lawlessness and divisive acts among Christians, St. Paul said, "Now I beseech you, brothers, mark them that cause division and offenses contrary to the doctrines which you have learned, and avoid them." Romans chapter 16, verse 17. The Holy Synod had no choice but to condemn such acts and excommunicate all those who participated in the lawless act, but with an open hand to receive anyone that would come with a sincere apology. One of the 26 monks has come to the Holy Synod and offered his sincere apology for his involvement in the lawless act just a day before the Holy Synod's resolution. It has been very clear from the developments following the lawless act that they are acting in the interest of the Oromo people, as they have indicated falsely, that they are being instruments of division within the church, with the direct involvement and support of the federal and the Oromo regional government. The Prime Minister, in a speech uncharacteristic of a leader, echoed and magnified the divisive rhetoric put forth by the lawless group as a pretext for their illegal acts, while offering no explanation for the intimidation, arbitrary detention, and forced break-in of the church's properties. Most of the servants that are being abducted by security forces in the Oromia region are known for the evangelical work in the Oromia language. The Prime Minister seemed to have forgotten that the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church is an entity that has a constitutional right for legal protection against any individual or entity that compromises its principles, properties, and its peaceful existence. Instead, he was often equating the Holy Synod of the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church with a group of rebellious dissenters who continue to sow seeds of division with the protection and help of the security forces. One of the most important aspects aspect for peace and stability is the preservation of institutions that are bedrock of the bond amongst its people. Race and language have never been and should never be used in the Church's apostolic and ecclesiastical mission. Race and language. I want everyone to repeat with me. Race and language.
Race and language.
Louder. Race and language.
Race and language.
Race and language.
Race and language.
Have never been.
Have never been.
And should never be.
And should never be.
Should never be.
Should never be.
Be used in the Church.
Be used in the church.
Apostolic.
Apostolic.
And ecclesiastic missions.
And ecclesiastic.
Instead, it is now being used to advance the objective of political agenda, trying to bend such institutions to the broken political system of ethnic federalism will only lead to the eventual destruction of the federal state itself. When the federal government is the force that fuels the tension among members of such institutions to fulfill its political, ideological, and other hidden goals, the potential for bloody unrest is exponentially increased. Because a government that is willing to bend such institutions to its will undoubtedly move with all destructive assets to oppose its will. So we, Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo faithfuls, we demand that, 1, the federal government recognize its responsibility to protect the interests of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, as it should of any legal entity in the country. The protection of the church is not a privilege for the government to offer, but it's a constitutional duty. I'll repeat that one more time. The protection of the church is not a privilege.
The protection of the church is not a privilege.
Repeat after me. The protection of the church is not a privilege.
The protection of the church is not a privilege.
The protection of the church is not a privilege.
The protection of the church is not a privilege.
For the government to offer.
For the government to offer.
But it is the constitutional duty.
But it is a constitutional duty.
But it is the constitutional duty.
But it is a constitutional duty.
Second, we demand that the federal government to stop intimidation, detention, and harassment of bishops, servants, and the faithful ones. Stop the genocide.
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 Third, we call on the government to refrain from fueling ethnic tensions among citizens by a false narration of ethnic federalism with the Holy and Apostolic Orthodox Church. Fourth, we demand that the federal government refrain meddling with the church affair other than fulfilling its constitutional duty due for any legal entity in the country. Also, we demand that the federal and Oromia regional government to stop assisting the lawless break-in and take hold of the church's property. Lastly, we demand that the state-sponsored medias, such as ETV and FANA, refrain from giving coverage to these illegal groups while denying any forms of coverage for the church during this crisis. For democracy and peace-loving nations, it is time to take all necessary diplomatic measures to avert the bloodshed of Christians. It is time for the free press to cover this heinous crime against humanity by the government of Abiy Ahmed. What is happening to the church now with the forceful political will of the government may be related to the atrocious religious cleansing of Christians from certain Oromia regions in Ethiopia. The imprisonment and arbitrary detention of Orthodox Christians is now taking a new phase, with security forces shooting indiscriminately at those gathered in the church on February 4, 2023, in the city of Shashamene. Multiple deaths and mass detentions have been reported. There are reports of shooting and attempts to disperse the faithful from the church buildings they are gathering in other parts of Oromia region. We are witnessing a genocide in the making. The world that silently watched the Armenian genocide of millions of Christians 100 years ago is doing the same today. It is better to prevent the unforeseeable cleansing of Orthodox Christians than to argue 100 years later whether this was a genocide or not. May the God of our fathers protect and preserve the church he established with his precious blood. May God have mercy on us, and may God rest in peace those who are receiving the crown of the martyrdom. The United Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church of TLW,